This video was brought to you by our backers on Patreon like Erin E. Those supporters not only help us make more content for everyone, but this month they also get access to a bunch of exclusive trial live streams. So sign up now by clicking the link below. As you might have seen in our recent video, things got pretty heated in the Commons on Monday evening. After Boris Johnson half apologised to the House for the findings described in the Sue Gray report, there was a bit of a kerfuffle when Ian Blackford, leader of the SNP in Westminster, accused Johnson of deliberately lying to Parliament, a charge known in Westminster as willfully misleading the House.
No longer trust. He has been investigated by the police. He misled the House. He must now resign.
This is much bigger than just some Westminster drama though, and potentially could force Johnson out of office. So let's discuss what Blackford's claiming, and if Johnson really did mislead the House. Now, the claim being made by Blackford, misleading the House, is a pretty serious charge. By convention, ministers who deliberately mislead the House are expected to resign, as happened with John Perfumo in 1963, and ministers who inadvertently mislead the House are expected to correct the record as soon as possible. In fact, the ministerial code states it is of paramount importance that ministers give accurate and truthful information to Parliament, correcting any inadvertent error at the earliest opportunity. Going on to say that ministers who knowingly mislead Parliament will be expected to offer their resignation to the Prime Minister. Now, this is technically just a convention. Ministers aren't legally required to resign, they're just expected to do so. But the whole UK political system relies on conventions like these. The UK system is sometimes described as the good chap theory of government, which essentially assumes that ministers are good chaps who play within the rules and obey conventions, even if there's technically no legal penalty. Anyway, Johnson denied Blackford's allegation, and Blackford was ultimately ejected from the chamber for making it. This is because, according to the rules of parliamentary debate, MPs can only accuse each other of lying during a substantive motion, not during a casual debate. Blackford's specific allegation related to a statement by Johnson on December 8th during Prime Minister's questions, when Johnson seemed to imply that he thought there had been no parties in Downing Street and that no rules had been broken.
I repeat, Mr. Speaker, that I have been repeatedly assured since these allegations emerged that there was no party and that no COVID rules were broken, and that is what I have been repeatedly assured.
Now, to be completely fair to Johnson here, in that clip, he only claimed that he had been repeatedly assured that there were no parties and that no rules were broken, but he does seem to at least imply that he also thinks as much. However, this seems unlikely, given that the police are currently investigating 12 parties, including one at Johnson's flat on November 13th and another he was known to have attended. So Johnson was presumably aware of at least a couple of the parties currently being investigated, but we'll leave it up to you to make up your mind on that one. Anyway, the matter was also raised by Labour MP Chris Bryant, who referred to two other statements that Johnson made to the House. One on November 13th and another on December 1st.
And again, because he still won't even admit to the House that when he came to us on the 13th of November and said the guidance and the rules were followed at all times, and on the 1st of December that all the guidelines were observed, that those things simply were not true. If he won't correct the record today, there's nothing accidental about this, is there? It's deliberate.
Now, we're not exactly sure what Bryant is referring to on November 13th, because Parliament was on recess at that time. But the December 1st allegation probably relates to this statement Johnson gave to Keir Starmer's first question during PMQs.
Is that all guidance was followed completely during number 10, and can I recommend?
Now, this one looks like a pretty cut and dry case of misleading the House. Here, Johnson himself said that all guidance was followed, not just that his team had assured him as much, and that seems very unlikely at this point. As to whether this misleading was intentional or inadvertent, well, it seems unlikely that Johnson was unaware of all the partying, especially given that, as we mentioned, one of the alleged parties occurred within his own flat. It's of course technically possible that Johnson didn't know about any of the parties, but it's just very unlikely. However, Johnson could get out of this on a technicality. The COVID regulations were implemented via the Public Health Act of 1984, which includes an exemption for Crown and government properties. This would include number 10, where the parties are alleged to have taken place. If this exemption renders the Downing Street parties as within the guidance and therefore legal, then Johnson's statement that the guidance was followed at all times isn't technically incorrect, and therefore he wouldn't have misled the House. Nonetheless, relying on this relatively arcane exemption wouldn't be a good look for Johnson, as it's pretty consistent with the one rule for us, another for them narrative that's damaged the government's poll ratings so far. So the two allegations of lying to the House directed at Johnson on Monday night look pretty dodgy for the PM, but it's at least possible that he could get his way out of them. And it's worth saying that these aren't the only instances where the Prime Minister has apparently misled the House. On that same night, Johnson implied that Starmer had failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile as Director of Public Prosecutions. And as we explained at the time in an Instagram post, this isn't really true. Starmer wasn't the reviewing lawyer of the Jimmy Savile case, and actually commissioned an investigation into the issue. And as a result, even Johnson's own MPs were apparently uncomfortable with this accusation, with former Chief Whip Julian Smith describing it as false and baseless. Somewhat unsurprisingly though, on Tuesday morning, Johnson's spokesperson said that Johnson, quote, stands by what he said in the House. But that's not the only instance of Johnson potentially misleading the House on Monday night. The Prime Minister's oft-repeated claim that the UK has the fastest growth within the G7 is also very debatable. While it's true if you look at the last 12 months, it's not true if you consider the last quarter. The UK came in 5th, ahead of just the US and Japan. And the UK's high growth figure over the last 12 months is largely due to the fact that the UK experienced the largest recession during the pandemic. Similarly, Johnson's claim that there are now hundreds of thousands of more people in employment than there were when the pandemic began, which he's repeated in the House on at least 6 occasions as of the writing of this video, is also questionable. Johnson's figure apparently excludes self-employed people. And in fact, according to the ONS data, there are about 500,000 fewer people in employment than there were at the start of the pandemic. The Office for Statistics Regulation has also sent a letter to the Prime Minister asking him to correct the record, but that happened before the incident on Monday, and he's still yet to correct the record. So, even with technical loopholes, it's clear that Boris is more willing than previous Prime Ministers to play fast and loose with the truth. As a last thing, we should say that we're not doing this video as a party political attack on Johnson or the Conservatives. We're doing this video because it's constitutionally important. The UK's uncodified constitution relies on politicians abiding within conventions and norms. When conventions are violated frequently and without consequence, they're no longer conventions, and this marks a change in the UK's constitution, akin to a constitutional amendment in the US. Now, it's not clear this has happened in the UK just yet. Most of the House does seem to consider lying a resigning matter, which is part of the reason why so many are calling on Johnson to go. But regardless, the convention is clearly under some significant strain. What do you think though? Did Johnson intentionally or unintentionally mislead the House? Does this mean that he should go? Comment your thoughts down below. Also, like I mentioned at the start of this video, this month our Patreon backers are getting access to a bunch of trial live streams as we work on developing our live output. Now, we will be doing public live streams soon, but these trial ones allow patrons to see our work in progress and feedback before anyone else can. So if that sounds like something you'll be interested in, then sign up to any tier above $5 by clicking the link below. Thanks for your support. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time I release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon by clicking the link in the description.